simple illustration. Do I have time, Mr. Chairman? Huh?
No.
Okay. Okay. Do I have time? How much time do I have for me to cover? More than enough already. Okay, then I will stop here. But before I finish off, let me finish off with the last thing. Now, as far as the presentation of earnings per share is concerned, it is stipulated in MASB 13 that the earnings per share must be disclosed on the face of the income statement. So therefore, if you are an auditor, if you find that the earnings per share is disclosed in the notes of the account, what would be your advice? You should advise your client that it should be disclosed in the face of the income statement. So let's confirm this principle by looking at the latest TNB financial statement. Okay. So now on the financial statement on page 5, so the TNB financial statements have complied with MASB 13. Why? Because the basic EPS and the diluted EPS are disclosed on the face of the income statement. Okay. So I think I will continue the lesson next week. Okay. So any questions? Any questions? Feel free to ask. You are encouraged to ask questions. Yes.
About the definition of that profit.
Yes.
The profit is 1.004 million.
Yes.
So is that the profit after tax and after interest and after the principal? What's your definition of that profit?
Oh,
after
net profit.
Tax, after
Yes.
interest, after principal.
Correct. Yeah. The numerator is defined as the net profit after tax, after minority interest. So therefore, it must be, if it's after tax, it must be after interest. Okay, it must be after interest because it's after tax. See? So, and as far as the, so it's before dividend, after tax, because it is a net profit attributable to ordinary shareholders. So therefore, it's before dividend, attributable to ordinary shareholders. So it's after tax, after minority interest, and of course before you deduct the dividends to payable to the ordinary shareholders. Okay, thank you for your first question. Any more questions? Otherwise,
One more. One more question?
Yes. Yes.
What's the benefit of this EPS figure?
Oh, that's very good. So if go back to our what I call the first point, the significance of EPS information, the significance. So why EPS information is so important? Because it's the same that investors always use the EPS figure to evaluate and to compare the company performance. So they look at the EPS of the company. Okay, so that at the same time, EPS is important. Why? Because it's used as a basis to compute the P ratio. Okay, so let's say if a company were to buy shares from, to take over the shares of another company, you need to value the shares. So therefore, EPS is part of the component to work out the value of shares. Why? Because value of shares is equal to EPS times P ratio. So therefore, you find that EPS information is important. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes?
Okay. Can the investors depend solely on the EPS in investing to buy shares of your company?
That's a very good question. So before I answer the question, maybe someone could suggest, what do you think? I think it's a very good question. If they can investors solely depend on the EPS to value shares of the company, isn't it? So what do you think? Any volunteer? Baha? Yes.
Well, I think we have to look more than EPS.
Correct.
Because this is one of the areas that we can look at, but we cannot fully focus on EPS.
Exactly. Yeah, because with EPS computation itself has its limitations. For example, you see the definition of EPS is net profit. And net profit figure is affected by the accounting policies adopted by the company. Like for example, research and development expenditure. Depends on whether the company wants to write it off or amortize during the useful life of the R&D expenditure. So all this affects the net profit figure. And besides that, you see, the earnings per share figure, the EPS figure, does not reflect the quality of earnings and also the risk factor. You know, a company will have very high EPS figure, but it will tell you what are the risk qualities of the company is facing with it. So therefore, the EPS figure has its own limitations. So therefore, it is used as a basis to compute the share value, but it should not be used solely for that purpose. You have to look at other factors as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, kalau siapa yang minat komputer tu, kita banyak